Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development tutorial series with UIKit by talking about the UIPickerView in UIKit. Now, what is a UIPickerView? Well, a UIPickerView is a type of view in UIKit that allows you to select items in one or more different what are called components. Now, the visual style of a UIPickerView uses a slot machine or spinning wheel metaphor. So they look, they'll act and look like spinning wheels like you would find in a slot machine. Now, of course, it's been this way forever, Now, if you've used a picker before in SwiftUI, if you've learned SwiftUI yet, if you haven't, that's fine. But if you use a picker view in SwiftUI, it uses that default wheel behavior if it's not in like a form or anything like that. Now, if you want to do something like a picker would, how a picker would act in a form in SwiftUI, then that's a little bit different, right? It's not going to be the same sort of thing that you're going to be dealing with when you're in UIKit. That's done entirely differently, not with a UIPickerView in UIKit. So, we're just going to cover how we can have a single component in a UIPickerView with various options, and then we're going to take a look at how we can create a UIPickerView that has multiple components. In this case, we're going to do 3 different components, and you'll see you'll see what's going to be in them here in a second. But let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I want you to do is we need to create our actual UIPickerView. So let's go into Xcode. And inside of our main screen or main view controller, at the top of our view controller, we need a few things. The first thing that we need is our actual UIPickerView. So we'll say var picker equals UIPickerView. All right. So I already have the constraints for this set up, so we don't have to worry about the constraints. It's just pinned to the bottom, leading, and trailing edges of our view, not the safe area, but the view itself. The next thing that we need is its delegate and data source. So we're going to put its delegate and data source in the same class, but you could, if you really, really wanted to, separate them into their own classes. You could keep it in your view controller, though I don't necessarily recommend that because in a real world project, you're going to want your code to be as clean as possible. If you're simply just learning, that's fine. You can keep it in your view controller, but just know that that's not good actual practice when you're doing a real world app. So let's go ahead now, and we're going to create an object of type picker delegate data source. We haven't created this class yet, and we will, but we're going to create an object for it anyway. So var, we're going to call it DDS, delegate data source. Now, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again, this is not good naming. This is just for teaching purposes. If you're in an actual project, you're in a real world project that you're actually going to show people and stuff like that, do not name your variables something like this. You're not going to remember what it is later on. All right. So equals picker delegate data source. Like that. Okay. Okay. Xcode didn't put that on your line. Okay. So now that we have our data source and delegate object, as well as our UIPickerView object, let's go down into a method that I have called configurePickerView. All right, configure picker, and in here we are simply going to assign the delegate and data source for our picker. We're going to enable programmatic constraints, and then we are going to add the UIPickerView as a subview to our view. All right, so we'll say picker dot delegate equals DDS. Then we'll say picker.data source equals DDS, like that. All right. Now let's go ahead and say picker.translates auto resizing mask into constraints. Set that to false. And then we'll say view add subview. And we'll add picker to that subview. We'll add the picker as a subview, rather. All right. So now we have our picker configured. We just now need to actually create our delegate and data source class. Now, again, if you really wanted to, if it's like really short stuff or anything like that, you're just returning values, it might be fine to leave it in the view controller and have the view controller conform to UIPickerView delegate and UIPickerView data source and set the delegate and data source properties on the picker to self. That would work just fine, but we're going to put it in a separate class just to kind of show you how you can do that. So go ahead and do a Command M or File New, File New File. And then what we want is you could say Cocoa Touch class and have it be a subclass of NS object, but we're going to use just the Swift file template, and we're going to type all that out ourselves. So we'll say picker delegate data source. Okay. Picker delegate data source, like so. All right. Go ahead and create that class. Now, inside of this class, the first thing we want to do is change the import. And we'll change it to import UIKit, like so. Now we need to actually create our class definition. So class picker delegate data source. And then we need to have this conform to NS object so it has access to UIKit and all that stuff. If you are doing this, keep in mind, okay, if you were doing this in your view controller, if you're having your view controller conform to the delegate and data source, you wouldn't need to conform to NS object, but because we're doing this in a separate class, we do. All right, NS object, UI picker data source, comma, UI picker delegate. Not document picker delegate. We want UI picker delegate. No. UIPickerView delegate. There we go. Go ahead and open that up. Now, inside of our class, we're going to provide an implementation for a few different methods. So if we go ahead and we just type picker, right, we get some autocomplete. The first one that we're presented with is width for component. So we're not going to use this because we're just going to have it calculate the width and height for the components on its own. But if you have custom, if you're using custom views, for example, in your picker as options to select, then only then would the well, not so much only then, but then you might want to use width, width for whatever, height for whatever, right, row height for component, that kind of stuff, So width and height for row at whatever. Now, number of rows in component. This is one that we do need. All right, and we will provide an implementation for this later. But for now, we're gonna get all the method stubs that we need. So picker, you can see that we get width for component, row height for component. We can do something when we select a row. We're going to go ahead and put this in here as well. All right. Let's see. We also want title for row. And if we look through the rest of these, let's see. We can say attributed title for row. So this allows you to stylize the title for each row with an NS attributed string and all that kind of stuff. And then you have view for row, which is used for if you want to have a custom view for a specific row, you can do that. We're not going to use this. Now, of course, you got row height for component. You got width for component, stuff like that. But these are the main methods that we're going to work with. We also want number of components. And then here we're going to return 1. Because for now, we only want 1 component. So go ahead and just return 1 in number of components. Now, next, we're going to give each of our rows a title. And we're going to use an array in my constants class that I have. It's an array of strings, which is what we need to return here. The array is called sizes, and this array has 3 items in it: small, medium, and large. So if we say return constants dot sizes, And then we can, inside of square brackets for our index, we give it row, because row is an int as shown in our signature. Now, each row has a title based upon the index position in our sizes array. All right. Now, did select row. What we'll do here is we will just we'll simply say print you selected and let's take a look at our signature here. Takes in a picker view. Okay. So now we should be able to say constants dot sizes. Constants dot. Okay. There must be. So we want constants sizes. And we want row. There we go. Now, because of the fact that we don't have multiple components, we only have one, you don't need to worry about this too much. There's no testing for the number of component and stuff like that, like the index position of that component. And so now that we have that, let's see here, where is it? All right. Now, the last thing is number of rows for component. What we'll do is we will return constants.sizes.count. There we go. Now let's run our code to make sure it works. Actually, before I do that, it's going to run on my phone, and I don't want it to run on my phone yet. We want toolbar. I want to go into my activity view path. Okay. We'll put it in the simulator. Go ahead and run it. All right, now our simulator is being launched. It's doing its thing. All right, now that that's being loaded, give it a second, of course. It's got to load everything and build it, you know. I'm gonna move that cord out of my way here. Okay. So here, now the Mac voiceover interprets this as a slider, but it's not a slider. Here, we can say, okay, well, it looks like voiceover will not let me adjust the values here. But what you should be able to do here is be able to go between the different options there and select small, medium, large, whatever the case might be. And in the console, you should see you selected small, medium, large, whatever the case might be, for whatever item you selected. All right, so that is one component in a UIPickerView, but we're going to ratchet this up, and we're going to have 3 components. So let's go back into Xcode. Let's go into our delegate and data source thing. And instead of returning 1 in number of components, we're going to return 3. All right. Now from here, let's go top down. All right. So what we'll do then is we will all right. Now, instead of just returning the size, the number of items in our sizes array, we're gonna get rid of this. Here, we're going to say switch we're going to say component. And in here, we'll say case 0. So if this is the first component, then we want to return our constants.sizes.count. Case 1. So if this is the second component, what we're going to do is we're going to return constants dot, and then we want colors. Constants dot, let's see, we don't want device symbols, we don't want shapes, we don't want sizes. Okay, so it appears that there's something up in my constants file. So let's go ahead and quickly take a look at that file. All right, so what we want I didn't make this static. There we go, static let. All right. So now we're going to say colors. Yep, colors. So we're going to return all the different colors, and we need to make sure that we get count for that. Count like that. And then finally, case 2, if this is the third component, we need to return constants dot shapes dot count. All right, so to recap what we just did is inside of our number of, well, not so much numbers, but number of rows, is that we have our switch statement that is switching through our component parameter, and if it's on the first component, we want to return the number of sizes. If we have if we're on the second component, we want to return the number of colors. If we're on case number 2, or case 2 rather, that is the third component, then we want to return the number of shapes. But because this has to be exhaustive, we'll have a default, and we'll say return 0 as its default. Now, what do we want to do what do we want to do here? Well, what we want is we can get rid of this print statement. And we'll do the same thing. So switch component. In here, we'll say case 0. In here, we want to return constants dot sizes at row. Well, I guess what we'll do is we don't want to return anything. We want to print that. All right. There we go. Next, we'll say case 1, and then in there, we'll print constants dot colors at row, like that. Case 2, all right, print constants colors row. Then in here we'll say print constants dot shapes shapes at the specific row. And so there is our did select item at method all implemented. So we're going to print out individually each selection from the different components. Nothing too complicated. And then finally, we're going to have our title for row. In here, we will say switch component case 0. We want to return constants dot sizes at the row. Case 1, or rather, there we go. Case 1, we want to return constants dot colors at the specific row. And then case 2, return constants dot shapes at the specific row. There we go. And that should be all. If we go ahead and run this, let's replace the current running version in the simulator, and we have a build failed. So what did we do wrong? The switch has to be exhaustive. That's why. All right. So we'll say default will return an empty string. And then in here, we'll do default print, we'll say unknown. All right, there we go. Now let's try to run it. Okay, so, okay, constant color. Colors, let's try that again. There we go. Okay. Now you can see we have the various components in our picker. So we have all the colors, we have all the shapes, and then we have all the sizes. So that pretty much does it for this video on how you can implement a UIPickerView in your iOS app. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as well as follow me on Twitter.